Here, hit go live, and we are live. Good morning, everybody. Let me switch back to where I can see what I'm doing here. I want to say good morning to everybody. This is Mayor Scott, and Jason Brown has popped up on the screen in the live view, but I don't know why that is. We'll switch to speaker view. We'll just get it as a group view. So anyway, hello, welcome to this morning's Mayor with Coffee with the Mayor, not Mayor with the Coffee, even though I am a mayor with a coffee. I want to welcome everybody that's going to be on live today. Just be aware that there's a little bit of lag from what we're doing through Zoom onto Facebook and stuff. So bear with us. We will answer questions as we go through. Give a little shout out to the market at Midtown this morning. They are open. They started at 8 o'clock this morning and go to 12. And I drove by there on my way in and got a couple of good, delicious fried apple pies for breakfast. So I'm all fueled up and ready to go. And I saw that there's some new vendors out there, one of them being Farmers Brothers. I saw that they have spices there. They have some coffees there. They've got some bulk items. I saw some pepper gravy mix, some biscuit mix, all kinds of stuff they have. So if you get a chance, go out there and check it all out and see what you have. They have the produces there. I saw somebody buying a watermelon. So there you go. It's getting to be watermelon season, I suppose. So I can't wait for that. Today, we've got a couple of guests that we're going to get into. One of the guests is Jason Brown, and the other will be Truett, our planning director. Jason is the president of the Greater Bryant Chamber of Commerce. And I've got him on first because he's got a prior obligation that starts in about 20 minutes. So he can only be on here for a short time this morning. But I appreciate him being on here. We're going to talk, excuse me. Jason is going to give us a little update on what the businesses have encountered during this time of this pandemic that we have. In addition, he's going to talk about some things that the chamber has done to try to stimulate business for the small business owner, the local businesses we have, and really every business we have in the city. So Jason, excuse me, go ahead and take it away and give us a little update.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mayor, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate everything that you've done for our city and our county. It means a lot to our citizens and our businesses. When all of this first started, I asked Alan what he wanted the chamber to do to stay open or stuff like that, and what he wanted us to do. And we took a different approach, and our chamber actually stayed open during this time because we felt it necessary to give immediate information to the public and to the businesses. And so during this whole time, we've been able to see how it affects different businesses in different ways. And for the past, 2 months, Al and I and Mayor Farmer and Gary James and Judge Airy and Lamont Cornwell have been meeting with different industries and seeing how COVID has affected these businesses. And it has truly affected everybody in different ways. We've never seen mandate. I've personally never seen mandated businesses shut down, such as barbershops, nail salons, and things like that. And so it affected them differently than it did restaurants. When it first happened, restaurants, it drastically affected them, especially when they shut down their dining rooms. And it took about 2 weeks. Once the entrepreneur spirit kicks in, that's one of the great things we've noticed during this whole time. Once businesses and their entrepreneur spirit can kick in, they flourish. Their sales actually increased, and the community wrapped their arms around it, and they embraced the changes, and it helped them. And they actually had started having sales increases about 3 weeks to 4 weeks afterwards. And once everybody realized it was okay to eat at the restaurants, and it just took off and hasn't changed since. other industries. One thing that's very important to know is we met with all the hospitals last week. We met with the Heart Hospital. We met with Saline Memorial. And one of the messages they wanted us to send out to everyone is that it is safe to go to the hospital. If you have any kind of medical need that you need to go to, please feel free to go to those. So we're about to start sending some messages out with them that they've sent us. They're open for business. So please feel free to go there. One thing that we've done as a chamber to try to help is just send out as much information as we can. We've started a Saline County Eats page for our restaurants, and we started a Saline County Shops page for our local retail. We want everybody to shop local. It's more important, I feel, than ever to shop local. We've been very blessed as a whole. We've had very few in Saline County. We've had very few businesses actually close their doors during this time. Very few. And so I take that as a win so far. As a whole, Saline County is strong, and we're continuing to do so. And that's because of our leadership and our mayors, our county judge, all those guys. They've led us in a great way. Our businesses thrive from that. But we've got some great things coming. Y'all saw, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we did a little flyover, and that was just a little teaser of what we've got coming in August 8th. August 8th is our air show. It's a legitimate air show. We'll have acts from all across the country coming in. You guys need to look up Team Aeroshell. We have them coming. They are a tremendous act. We're probably going to be one of the first air shows in the country. It's going to be massive. We will have people flying in from all over the country to come watch. Our airport is going to be on the map. Bryant will be put on the map after this air show. Pops in the Park. We will be having Pops in the Park. That will be on July 4th. It's a Saturday this year. I met with Parks Director Chris Treat, and I and RJ Hawk met with him Friday or Thursday, and we're planning that, and we'll have more updates on that probably this next week. But right now we're set on go for that. The air show, Fall Fest, all that kind of stuff. We're on go. So,
well, that's cool. That's good. What about Fall Fest? Are we doing Fall Fest this year, Jason?
we are. It'll be the last Saturday in September. It'll be September 26th. So it'll be a big time for that as well.
Wow. We'll be busy for the next few months. Then.
Oh my goodness. Like. Anna, she's sleeping right now. That way she can get some rest, because for the next few months, it's just back to back to back to back.
Oh, I bet. It's going to
be pretty busy.
You wear me out with everything you do, in addition to everything else you do. So,
but if you haven't gone to see that Saline County Eats page, it's pretty neat. It's a centralized location for all food trucks, restaurants, and it's for people to share their food. We all like to break bread together.
Right.
And so if you're out at a restaurant, take a picture of your food and put it on there, showcase our local restaurants, and let everybody see what they're doing.
Can the restaurants join that page also and showcase what they've got?
They can.
Kind of their way to advertise?
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
That's
sure good. So there you go, everybody. Jason, we really appreciate you being here today and giving us all that valuable information. Again, as you go out and go to restaurants and stuff, be sure though, when you're out there, to follow the guidelines that are out right now with regard to social distancing. As you go in, wear a mask, follow the directions that they ask you to do. So it helps keep everybody a little bit safer right now. So it's gotten to be a cliche to say, but it's the new normal. Fortunately, right. It is what it is. So hopefully one day we'll get to where we can treat this virus just like the flu. But, I don't know. Even though with the flu, you got to be careful too. So
That's right. Our goal is to get to phase 2. That's what we want, to get to phase 2.
exactly. Get to phase 2. And I think the governor may be talking about going to phase 2 in different regions of the state on Monday is what I've heard. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see what we can do here as a result of that, because that's going to precipitate some stuff that I'm going to talk about later with our parks as well. So anything else you can think of, Jason?
No, sir. Just we appreciate all the support from the city, and we appreciate all the hard work you guys do in the parks. We appreciate the community. Wrapping your hands around the businesses. It's been a different thing than we've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new experience for everybody, or almost everybody that's alive. So there are a few people that are still alive that survived the what they called the Spanish flu pandemic in the early 1900s, but not many. So we appreciate those and we can celebrate them too. Well, thank you, Jason. I'm going to go on and talk about a couple other things that Jason, as what he said, kind of brought up. If you need to go, Jason, feel free anytime. It's not a problem at all, because I know you're a busy man.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody.
All right, take care. So a couple of things that Jason talked about that I want to bring up with regard to the city. This has hurt businesses financially, and it also has an impact on the city. So I wanted to give you just a kind of an idea what the timeline for the city is when we receive sales tax funds. The way it works is a business has the sales tax, collects the sales tax, and then they have a certain period of time at the end of that month to remit that sales tax to the state revenue, or I guess it's Department of Finance and Administration. Then if they do it within a certain time frame, the business gets a small discount on their sales tax. So they get a kind of a discount. They don't have to pay as much. If they don't, they have to pay the full amount. So that goes into the state, and then the state processes and does what they have to do with it. And then they take a percentage, 1 or 2%, I think it's 2% of the sales tax that's collected in Bryant. And then the next month, we finally receive that sales tax. So sales tax money that the city gets in any particular month is really the sales tax that was collected 2 to 3 months prior. So that kind of makes a little bit of a lag time in regard to this, because I know all through this time of the pandemic, we've been real careful with our expenses because we did not know what the impact was. We still honestly don't know what the impact's going to be, because at the end of June is when we will get sales tax dollars for April, which is where the biggest impact is probably going to be. So because of that, we are still controlling our spending and being very careful with the dollars that we collect or that we get from the sales tax and other things. In addition to that, people didn't drive as much during that time. There wasn't as much gasoline tax collected, which we get a portion of for our roads. Every year we get about $300,000 from turnback money from the fuel sales tax for our streets in the city. So when that slows down, that causes some problems. But that's okay. We will work our way through this. Once we see what the impact is, we'll make adjustments. I've got some steps in place if we need to do some budget cuts, that we can do some budget cuts and still function as a city, and still with my goal is to maintain the staff we have and not have to lay anybody off should that occur. Right now, I don't see that happening with all indications, but if you keep going out and shopping and stuff, it helps us as well. So we appreciate it. And thank you. That kind of brings me up to another thing, which is very important around here in 2020, and that's the 2020 census. We have been looking at the numbers, and for the most part in the city, there's been some really good reporting of people going online or phoning in, getting that census data turned in. I don't know if you realize this, but the Constitution mandates that be done. So it's required for everybody to respond to the census. There are certain areas of the city that are a little lower in their response rates. Based on what we're looking at, it looks like it's the area mostly south of I-30 and west of Reynolds Road. So if you're in that area and you have not responded to the census, please do so, and that'll help boost our numbers. One thing that does by going ahead and responding to the census and getting that information in there is it makes it to where somebody does not have to come later and knock on your door and say, hey, I'm with the census and I need to collect this information. I know a lot of people don't like people knocking on the doors because they think they're salesmen and stuff like that. And I totally understand that. Or sometimes you work nights and these people would be coming in the daytime and they may knock on your door and wake you up. And, we don't want that either. So if you can get out there and go after that census and get those numbers up and see if we can't get ahead of Benton, by the way, because they're a little bit ahead of us. Last time I checked, they're about 3% ahead of us. So, we always like to beat Benton in certain things, and census is also one of them, census response. So get out there and do that. It's nighttime on my monitor in the back. We also have another guest that's going to talk to us about some proposed changes in zoning. And look at that. He miraculously appears on the screen. It's Truett Smith, the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of Bryant. Huh? Community Development. I am so sorry. I don't even know your full title. I apologize because I always deal it with everything else. Thank you for coming on, Truett. I know it's so exciting to come to work on a Saturday morning, and I appreciate you taking away from your weekend for this. But tell us a little bit about these proposed changes in the zoning, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mayor. And yeah, these commercial zonings that we're doing, it's a pretty unique opportunity that we've got right now, and I think the residents of Bryant have. It's not every or day or year that you really go through your commercial zoning code and kind of work through some of the intricacies of it. But that's what we're doing right now. We've got a proposed new commercial zoning code that's going in front of Planning Commission and hopefully makes its way to City Council. And what that does, just for everybody, is that every piece of property in the city has a zone. So specifically, those commercial zones are dictated into. Right now, we've got two buckets, C1 and C2. But what we're looking at doing is adding two more commercial zones to that. And what that's going to allow is a little bit more diversity. It's going to allow a little bit more customization to it. So that's, I think, really important as the city of Bryant continues to explode with growth, is being prepared for that. So why should you care about that though? Why should the resident be interested in commercial zoning? And I think that goes with anybody who's had that circumstance of, why did that go there? Why that type of business there? Or I really wish that wouldn't have gone. I really wish that drive-through wouldn't have gone right there, right next to everything. Or, did the car wash have to go right there? If you've ever asked yourself that question, or if you've ever felt that before, then you need to be involved in this process that we're going through right now. And luckily, we've developed a way to hopefully make it really easy to be involved in. With everything that's going on with COVID, getting out to a public meeting can be difficult or challenging, and that's why we developed an online Google form that you can go to and use, and that is on the city website. So you can go on there. It's also on our Facebook page. Go on the city website under the news update. It's the first thing on there. And you can go in there and you can you can look at all the zoning maps. You can look at our new zoning table that shows all the permitted uses and everything. And then fill out and comment on any section of that. And that's an official comment. So just like if you came to a public meeting and stood in front of the commission and made a comment, doing that online form is just an official of a comment for us. And we're going to take that information and we're going to present it in front of the Planning Commission. So that they have everybody's comment that way. I think it's a really cool tool that we're trying to use there, and I think it can be really beneficial. But then, of course, if you get into that form and you've still got some questions or some things just don't line up, the planning department staff here, we're here to help, and we're here to hopefully answer some of those questions. So feel free to reach out to us. We are having the workshop for this and a planning commission meeting on Monday night. But the form is already live. It's been live for a few days now, and it will stay live until Sunday night. And then we'll compile all those comments so that we can present it to Planning Commission on Monday. So,
Yeah.
Like I said, a really unique opportunity we've got here to sort of, help vision where Bryant's going to go in the future and how it's going to develop. And I think it's a unique opportunity that we all need to take advantage of as residents of Bryant.
Yeah, I agree, Truett. This is the most important time for people to work in their comments, because this is the time to get input on that. If there's a business or a type of business, I should say, not necessarily business, but a type of business that you're not comfortable with being in a certain area, this is the time to make those comments about that, so that code can be changed, that zoning can be changed to fix that, so we can make everybody happy. So that's very important for the community to be involved in this.
That's a really good point, Mayor, because I know there's times, and I think it's part of just the city developing and going through that process that people get sort of dreary about maybe a certain situation or a certain project or something like that. And I understand that, but a lot of times, by the time we've reached that point where we've got a specific project coming in, the rules are set, and we can't, once they've put in their application, we can't change the trajectory on them. We can't move that stream that they're headed down. We have to set, as a city and as the residents of Bryant, we got to set those rules ahead of time. So that then they have a really clear path of what developing in Bryant means.
Right.
And that's important for us for being, helping businesses and developments come into the city. But there's also a legal aspect of it that we just got to understand. We got to set our rules. They have to abide by our rules. We just need to make sure our rules are what we want them to do and act and go through our process for. And that's what the update that we're doing now is going to help with that.
Yeah. And once our rules are in place, a lot like you're talking about, like they even are now, if a business or a person wants to develop a property, as long as they meet the requirements of that code and the requirements of the zoning, then they can really build what they want on that property. Isn't that right, Truett?
Yeah, correct. So, earlier I talked about those different zones, and I kind of described it as a bucket. So if they're going into, let's just say, C2, and it meets all of the things that we've said, hey, all this stuff can go to C2. If it goes in there, then pretty much at that point, it still has to go through all of our planning process. We're still having our development team look at it, but they're permitted to do that use. So yeah, it still gets the review process, and it goes through all of that.
Yeah.
But that's a permit by right, and it's something legally that they have to do. So that's why it's so important to not only look at the commercial zoning around the city. On the form, it's got it broken up into different sections, because I stare at that zoning map all day and I get lost in it. So I completely understand. So we broke it up into 10 smaller chunks that you can look at. And I really encourage anybody that has any interest in it is to go look at maybe the chunk that's next to their house, or I really love this part of the city. What's going in there? How would maybe what could go in there change that, and really dive in there and look at those specific sections and see how they're going to be impacted, and then look at that use table to see what specific uses can go in there. Is this an appropriate place for a drive-through restaurant? Or maybe it's just a place that should just have a restaurant and maybe not have a drive-through, because the traffic would be, a lot, and it just couldn't handle it.
And the nice thing about breaking those two zones that we currently have, commercial zones, into more zones, it allows us to cut the area a little bit more. It's probably not the best term for me to use, but customize the area to make it more appropriate for what the people want. Correct? I can't remember. Did you mention what those two additional zones are going to be yet?
I did not. I can go through that just real
Yeah,
quick because
yeah, give
it's
us a little
actually
review.
what we're doing. I think is kind of cool. Obviously, I think it's cool. I'm the zoning guy. So we're adding. Currently, we've got C1 and C2. Those are our only two buckets. And if you look at the zoning map, it's dominated by C2. So that's not really a healthy thing. So what we've developed is we'll have C3, which will be a new zone, C2, C1, and then another one called O1. So C3 is going to be everything up and down the interstate. So that's going to be, open sales, interstate frontage type of uses. And then C2 is going to be everything down our main corridors, which is our two state highways, Highway 5 and Highway 183. So the zone, there will be specific zones for that, and that'll be C2. And then everything that is not in those two areas and is still commercial, because we've still got some commercial nodes out there that are away from those areas, or some properties that are abutting those areas, and those are going to be zone C1. That's what it's looking like right now. And then our fourth zone actually is nothing's being zoned our fourth zone. It's like putting an extra tool in the toolbox to use for later. And that's O1, and it's like a quiet office space is what it is. So think if there was a house somewhere that was maybe on the border of a subdivision or something, and maybe an attorney wanted to go in there and use it as his workspace or something like that, then they could zone O1. But of course, the uses that are allowed in O1 are very restrictive because of that quiet office space than maybe what's happening at C2 and what can go up and down the highways, or
Right.
C3 in the interstate.
Can you give some examples of types of businesses that could be in each zone,
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna
if you don't mind?
go to my table real quick.
Yeah. While you're looking at that real quick, somebody had mentioned the fact that on social media, there's been a lot of comments about the zoning, these proposed zoning changes. And we just want to remind you that while you can comment on Facebook about it, to get an official comment in the record, you really need to fill out the form that we have provided online. So if you've made a comment, go ahead and fill out a form online so we can be part of the official comment process too. So
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. We need that comment in the form. Or if you don't want to do the form and you can't make it to the meeting, understand both of those. Reach out to me or Colton here at the planning department. We can take your comment officially as well and get that information to our commissioners and eventually to council, so that they have that feedback. That feedback's really important to all of them in making a decision like this. It's important for all of us to be involved in this process. Mayor, I thought maybe a good example to use was restaurants. Everybody loves restaurants.
yes, we do.
So one of the things that the code reads right now is that restaurants can be in any of those C1, C2, C3 zones, but the difference is that drive-through. So where's a drive-through permitted or where's it not permitted? And I think that's something that can kind of stand out depending on its location in the city. There's certain places you want to drive through, and there's other places you don't. Another use like that would be like a hotel. So those are permitted, and a large scale hotel is permitted in C3 and C2. But for it to go in C1, it needs a conditional use permit, which is basically just another way to say, hey, this use may be okay, like it could work here, but we would like a little more public comment at that time when it comes in. And so that conditional use permit makes them come back in and get and have another public hearing, and there's a notification process for that. So it's a way to sort of play the middle ground between you're permitted for this or no, you can't do this.
Right.
The CU is, I think, a really effective tool for that. But the other cool thing, I say is cool. Been working on this for a little while. Is that the code has very specific definitions for each use. So if you get in there and you're really digging down into it, it will tell you like what's the difference between small scale office space and large scale office space.
So
What's the
people can
difference
see that
between-
when they're looking at this review. Gotcha.
Like what's the difference between a large scale hotel and a small scale hotel?
Yeah.
And it gives those definitions, and usually there's some in the back, there's some, I say the back, like, when you're designing the code, there's some certain reasons you're doing that for certain things, whether that be a building code or a fire code or something like that. But it's really, those definitions are what's going to help us really help define what the city is going to develop into. Right now, our code doesn't really have a lot of definitions. It's got a list of approved uses, and you kind of got to guess what those mean. So I think having everything clearly spelled out is going to be great for the city and the residents. It's also going to be great for the developer. So it's just very clear what the expectation is.
Sure. Once public comments are done, it goes to planning commission, correct? And
Correct. So yeah, we're gathering that public comment through the online process. There'll be, like I said, a meeting and a public hearing on Monday night for the planning commission, and so they'll be an open public meeting for that here at City Hall. Now we are following all of the COVID-19 regulations for that meeting, so masks and social distancing. So because we want to stay safe when we do that.
Right.
But that's why we're also encouraging that online comment or reaching out to us for comment.
Right. And then after that, it goes to council for approval, correct?
Correct. So if things, depending on how things go with the public hearing and how planning commission reviews it, if they review it positively, then they can they can approve it, and with that approval, it will send it to council for approval as well.
And if the commission decides to change parts of it, it'll just go back to you and your department. You'll implement those changes, and it'll go through that process again.
Yeah. So if there's some modifications, depending on what the modifications are, if they're kind of minor, then we can change. Then they can make those modifications that night. If it's a more major modification, they want a little bit more of a study on it or something like that, then we can take it back, look at it a little bit more, redesign some things, and then come back to them with a different approach to it if that's what needs.
That's cool. That just goes to show you how community involvement works with city government. It's really, really important for the community to be involved with that. And with regard to that, by the way, thank you, Truett, for all that information. I can't think of anything else relating to zoning that we're doing right now. Can you think of anything else that we've missed talking about?
Well, I think the only other thing I wanted to plug is something you already plugged, and that was the census. It's really important that we be a part of that process. It has so many different ramifications for so many different groups. We're talking about it from the government side, but the school districts are affected by that. There's nonprofits out there that are affected by that. Like, it's just really important. Businesses use that information to develop with. So that statistical information is really important. So it's something that we need to go out there and make sure that we're either filling out that letter or getting online and filling it out. It's just really important to our community.
Absolutely, because that determines some of the funding we get, the census does. So, I mean, if we don't get accurate numbers, we don't get accurate funds allotted to us from the state and federal government. So.
Yeah, I think somebody calculated that number out, what each of those is worth. And, it's just an important thing to realize that every person in that count, it's really important.
It's really true when you say everybody counts.
It is.
So, well, appreciate it, Truett. One thing that brings me to is something that we're starting back with. I'm kind of jumping through my agenda just a little bit, kind of rearranging it because I think it fits best right here. And that's for me to talk about what's called as Bryant 101. A number of years ago, Bryant 101 was established and by Jerry Henson. And let me just give you a little history about it and tell you what it's about, because it's a good way for people to get involved in the city, learn about city government, learn how things operate and whatnot. So the city of Bryant is excited to announce registrations are now open for Bryant 101, a community outreach initiative created to assist citizens in building relationships with city leaders gaining an understanding of local government services and creating the opportunity for the city to improve communications with those we serve. This was first created in 2015 by former Councilman Jerry Henson. At that time, he had 10 attendees, and several of these attendees are still active in the city with various projects or various committees or huh?
You still hear from them.
Yes, and you know, and I hear from them on a regular basis. And I was hearing from them and did not know they'd gone through this program. So it's a great program to do. It's going to be an 8-week course. Attendees will spend time with city departments, leaders, and staff covering topics such as finances, planning, engineering, public works, parks, public safety, and learn about the various layers of the city process itself. So that's really good. The meetings are going to be on Thursday evenings, starting on July 2nd, with the exception of one Saturday morning, which will be towards the end of the course, which will be a combined fire department, police department day. That'll be a Saturday morning. I believe it's from like 9 to 12. And hey, we may even give you all some lunch after that. You know, who knows? The mayor may grill. You never know. I will say the class size is limited though, because to make it effective and useful and for everybody to learn like they should, we're going to try to limit that class size to about 16 on this round, if I remember right. We would love to have about 4 people from each ward so we can have good representation across the city. So if you think you may be interested and you want to try apply, feel free to go online to the City of Bryant webpage, look under the mayor's page, and you'll see the announcement, I believe, for it and a link for the application, correct?
Is that its own page?
Yeah, it's on its own page. Once you get there, you'll find Bryant 101 page. So I had to clear it with the boss to make sure. But if you can get that done and get your application submitted by the 19th, we can go through them and look at them and get people where they need to be and get this thing started in July. So I look forward to it. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to go through it myself just because I think it's pretty cool to do, and it gives me a chance to meet people and get to know some of the citizens a little bit more. So feel free to go look at that and get on that, and we'll be pushing that out a little bit more on the social media. We did get a comment by email the other day from Alicia Morrison. I'm sorry, I always mess it up. She's with the Courier Democrat. I'm sorry, the Sling Courier, not the Courier Democrat. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm mixing up my papers. And she asked a question that she actually wanted to hear from the Chief Menon about this, but unfortunately, with the way he's been working this week, he was not able to attend this morning, but he did provide a statement for me. And what she wanted is she goes, I'd like to hear the mayor address how he as mayor and the local police are ensuring people of color get equal treatment, what protections are in place to ensure officers don't mistreat those of color. It would be great if Chief Minden would make a statement. Well, like I said, he was unable to be here this morning. In fact, since he worked probably till about 4 o'clock this morning, he's probably in bed right now, and I don't blame him. So here's the statement that he prepared, and then I've got some things that I would like to talk to as well, because I've had some questions as well. So it says, the officers of the Bryant Police Department are held to standards and regulations set forth by their oath of office. Agency code of conduct, agency policy and procedures, agency mission statement, all federal, state, and local laws, and the constitutions of the state of Arkansas and the United States of America. All of the above require equal and fair treatment to all people. Officers have body-worn cameras and in-car cameras to allow for auditing of citizen interactions. Officers receive annual training per state law on racial profiling, bias-based policing. Training is also provided for cultural diversity, use of force, and de-escalation of incidents. There are also processes in place for citizens to report any police misconduct. Those complaints are then thoroughly investigated. And in addition, it is the responsibility of any Bryant Police Department employee to provide the department with specific notice whenever she is involved or aware of acts of misconduct. And those acts of misconduct can be from a superior or somebody else. It does not matter. we take things like that serious in Bryant. We try to treat everybody equal, and we do our best for that. And if somebody is not doing that, we definitely need to know, and that will be investigated and appropriate action. A couple of comments I've had this week is, early on, if you remember, end of last week, there's been a couple of curfews in neighboring cities. Benton had established a curfew. Little Rock established a curfew. And I considered establishing a curfew for people, but I opted not to after talking with the police chief for a couple of reasons. And one of them is, to me, that drew a line in the sand. So if there was a peaceful protest that occurred in Bryant, and it was peaceful and not causing any problem, no destruction of property or anything like that, then with that curfew, if they got to that point where it was time for the curfew to be enacted, then that set a line in the sand. And if I'd established a curfew, then that created a point of conflict between the police and peaceful protesters. And I didn't want that, because that just creates, well, like I said, conflict, and that can escalate very quickly, as we've seen in other places, it seems like. And I felt that that was not the best way to go. I have every confidence in the police department that they do what they need to do. If we had peaceful protests, and we have not had any protests at all in the city of Bryant, which is fine. And if we do, that's fine as well. We've not had any acts of violence in the city. So, but if there were a peaceful protest and somebody started acting up and damaging property or injuring somebody, then the police would take the appropriate action on that person. But there's no reason to punish everybody for the acts of just a few. And our laws and ordinances are in place to take care of those few people, not everybody. So that's kind of what I wanted to say, because as a city, in fact, the city of Bryant, and I know Benton as well, and Saline County are all joining together and are releasing a statement very soon. In fact, I believe they put on Facebook last night and this morning with a picture and video that any of these agencies do not condone police brutality. So as a result of that, if you know of something that's happened, please report it, and we will investigate it as we need to, or we'll have outside people investigate it, because sometimes certain investigations require outside people, and that's fine. But, we are here to serve you and protect you, the citizens of Bryant. Let's see, what else do I got? A little bit of parks information. Do you have anything that you've missed so far? Besides, I'm going to talk about parks here in a second.
No questions yet either. So
No questions. Hey, I don't know if that's good or bad. No, but if anybody ever wants to talk to me about police, what we need to do, if there's something they suggest with the police, feel free to give my office a call and we'll set up an appointment to go. I know there's several people that have commented on some social media posts that I'm going to invite for a group. So we're going to go from there. Do a little switch on my computer here. So somebody had just sent me, said they've never felt safer in the city of Bryant than they do now. The current police presence is incredibly comforting. I don't know if you realize this. I'll just mention this a little bit, because some people don't get out at night, but in the evenings, what Bryant, Benton, and Saline County have done have kind of banded together and established a police presence just to say, hey, we're here, we're out here serving and protecting you. It's caused some overtime to be worked up, but that's okay. We don't mind that. But we just wanted to make sure that, hey, we're here. So when you drove around in the evenings, you would see police car in certain areas. Their lights were on, but they were just there just to make sure everything stayed. Appreciate that. Let me talk about parks for a minute, because there's some big news that happened Friday in parks. I know a lot of people are going to be happy about this. As you know, last week they started organized sports. Bathrooms are getting opened now in those venues, or may have already been. We've got some equipment now that we can use to go in and decontaminate those bathrooms fairly easily. So we're doing that. But the biggest news of all, I think, is what affects Mills Park. The playground at Mills Park is going to open Monday morning. So moms, dads, get your kids out there, wear them out. But please maintain social distancing while you're out there, because there's always that risk, of things. The equipment will not be cleaned or decontaminated, because partly the sun will do a lot of that itself, we think, and from what we've been hearing with regard to that. In addition, it's just kind of cost prohibitive to spend 2 hours, every 2 hours going out there and spraying it down with a wet solution, and then it has to dry. And that just wouldn't be fun for the kids to play on.
If your kids are not feeling good, if they're sick.
Yeah.
keep 'em
So
home.
if your kids aren't feeling good and they're sick, keep them home, let them play in the backyard as opposed to the playground. So if they're not, come out and play, walk, stroll, that's still open. I pretty regular and run around the trail and sweat and think I'm about to die, but that's okay. I haven't done that yet, and I hope I don't. One thing that was asked of me, well, what about the basketball courts? Are they going to be open? Well, they're not open yet. Talked to Chris Treat, the director of parks, and he told me that he's waiting until Monday, because we had heard the governor's going to make some statements about phase 2 opening in certain areas based on the levels of cases that they're active cases that they have. We think we're going to be part of that gets to go to phase 2, but we have to wait until that official. As soon as we hear that news, we will start that process of opening basketball courts again, so you can play basketball and stuff. Again, you'll still have to be careful, and I wouldn't play with just absolute strangers, and make sure you know who you're dealing with. So if you play and somebody gets sick, the contact tracing can still be done, and they can track that, and everybody will be safer that way. With that, I think that's about it that I have today. Dana, can you think of anything that I've missed?
No, I think that was the big news. The happy news was the park playground.
I know it's going to make my girl happy.
Mhm.
She'll get to go swing. So
That's all I can think of.
that's all I can think of too. I'm going to kind of wait a minute or two, I guess, and I can't see if there's something,
Notify me and report concern.
Oh yeah, well, I'm waiting to see if anybody has a comment, because there's a bit of a lag here. Don't forget that, if you have a concern in the city, if you see something happening in the city, something that needs to be repaired or fixed, go on the website to the Notify Me page, or I'm sorry, the report a concern part of the website, and fill that form out. If it's like a pothole in a street, put it on the street department. If it's some debris in a storm drain, or as a lady I was talking to yesterday when I was running mentioned, one of her neighbors is continually blowing their grass clippings out in the street and leaving them there, which washes into the storm drain, which can potentially clog that up and cause some major problems. Report things like that under the appropriate things, or if it's not the appropriate one, we'll get it to the appropriate one. But for something like that, that would be stormwater or code enforcement that would deal with something like that aspect. If you see somebody doing a good thing, going to report a concern and pop it in there, because what that does is that notifies that department that they've done good. Or feel free to email me, and I always forward those emails to the people that do that. I know I got a kudos for a couple of our police officers last week that they were going by, I can't remember if it was Goodwill or Civitan, and they saw this elderly lady trying to get a TV in the back of her vehicle, and she couldn't get it in there. So they stopped and helped her. So, I mean, that's what we're here for, folks. So come on out and do that. Besides report a concern, there's also Notify Me on our city website. That you go in there and you click the areas that you want to be notified on. If you want to get every press release that comes out of the city of Bryant, which is kind of a cool thing, I think, but I get them. You can click on that. If you want to know when projects go out for a bid, if you're a business and you want to bid on certain projects, you can click that. There's a variety of different things. Agendas for the different meetings are posted there. So feel free to excuse me, to log in and set up your email to get those notifications. it's a good way to stay connected in the city and learn what's happening in the city. So, excuse me. So feel free to do that. We've had no comments that we know of that we haven't already addressed. So I think without further ado, I'm going to say goodbye and feel free to, it's only 9:50, so feel free to roll on over to the market at Midtown. It's at the Drive Down Commonwealth, and you will not miss it. And visit them and get you some produce. And if you're lucky, the fried pies will still be there. I'm just saying, the apple were delicious this morning. So feel free to enjoy that and go on. And other than that, I'm going to say goodbye and wish everybody health and wellness, and stay safe and social distance. Talk to you later. Bye.